You're listening to Coffee, Chaos, and ProdSec. I'm Cameron Walters, the application security and DevSecOps builder trying to automate the world. With me is Kurt Hendel, a battle-tested security architect with a zero-trust worldview. We turn real-world security chaos into conversations that actually matter. So grab your cup of coffee and let's travel back in time to the original recording. Coffee, Chaos, and ProdSec starts now. We're back. We made
Yes,
it
sir.
again. Another week. I know it's a little different this week, right? We're not recording this. I mean, I think we've figured out our workflow, right? We're gonna record on like Friday or Saturday, and then the following episode will release a week later, unless it's like one of those emergency ones or something we want to pump out real quick.
Emergency podcasts.
Emergency podcasts.
Sounds
Major
serious.
cybersecurity events going out. We got to get our opinions out there. So thank you
There's
for
events
everyone.
every day now.
I mean, true. But thanks everyone for joining us for Coffee, Chaos, and ProdSec. It's another week, so I know this might be. I think this is the episode, like the final episode that is not going to be released or be released in our batch, right? Because we're gonna batch release like 7 episodes, and so this one's gonna be the final one. Then we'll do some editing and pump them out. But today's topic is access out of control in parentheses. I like how it's in parentheses, right? Tales of permissions gone wild. A deep dive into access control gone wrong and how to lock things down without locking people out. I know for me, in an AppSec world, it's like secure your creds and least privilege, right? That's like
and move on.
And move on, right? Like, and we're done. I checked the boxes. I'm out, right? But I know
Must be nice.
yeah, I mean it's better, right? But that's why you're here, right? You're gonna school me on security architecture and why we need to
try
do this. Yeah, and try. Yeah. So, but I just got back from LastCon, right? So I was at a security conference for the last 2 days, which was amazing. So if you're in Austin, Texas, it happens, I think it's like the week before Halloween every year that we have a 2-day conference. It's 2 days of training, so it's technically 4 days. I did not attend any of the trainings this year. A lot of them just weren't my purview, but I heard they were amazing content, amazing value. I was talking with some of the people who give it. They're like, I usually charge like $5,000, for this training, and I sell this out all the time. And at the conference, they sell it for like a couple hundred, right? And if you're a student, it's even cheaper.
Right.
So amazing deal. I heard nonstop good things about the training. For me, the conference talks, it felt like a really level up this year. I mean, last year I liked a lot of it. I walked away with some good things, but this year I don't know what it was. I walked away with so much more. I have like 2 or 3 pages of notes and more that I have to write down thoughts. I don't know if like this is my idea, right? Is I write all my notes in my phone. I'm a fast typer, right? We were talking about this. I'm a really fast typer on my phone. Like my wife all the time is like, "How are you typing so fast?" I'm like, "I'm always on my phone." Literally always on my phone, so it's just like I'm a machine, right? Someday my thumbs and my fingers are gonna get wrecked because I'm gonna get arthritis, right? It's inevitable. But
gotta do some exercises.
I should seriously, yeah. I mean,
like when you cut your finger that one time.
I know, true. Dude, I still don't have feeling in some parts of my finger. There's parts where I can like stab it with a needle, and I'm like, I don't feel. So still, but it's getting better slowly over time. But tangent, I take all my notes, and then they're just like quick thought process and things, and then I drop it into some kind of like LLM and say expand, improve, elaborate, and create me a study guide or overview of my notes from this conference. And then that gives, I say put it in Markdown because I take all my notes in a specific Markdown tool, and then now I have these really vast notes with additional study topics or expanded things, and then I can continue to write my thoughts in a more thorough way. But I like how it gives me a lot of structure, because usually my notes are just chaos. Like one talk it's about this, and the next talk is this, or they mention something, and so I go down 4 tangents in the same talk with all my notes. It's a good time.
Yeah, I think I have a hot take, because you say you put your notes in an LLM, which is the LLM is what backs the generative AI that you're using. I did
Yeah.
a LinkedIn post on this yesterday. So
Okay.
hot take, generative AI takes your input, does some fancy work with the LLM underneath the hood, and then it barps out the output. It's like, here's your notes. Go study, Cameron. Go to school.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's usually retains when I do this, it retains 90% of my notes, but it gives me some sure gets things wrong all the time.
Organization.
Yeah, it's about the organization, the compilation of thoughts. Sometimes if I have like opinions in my notes, I'll say, give me the direct counterpoint, right? Or give me a harsh critic
Sure.
on some of my points, right? And it gives me that opposite thought process. When you get that opposite thought process, my juices start rolling, right? I always tell people when I'm talking to them, like, change my mind, right? Or be that
Yeah.
devil's advocate because I'm not out in this world to be right. I'm out to learn and understand. And sometimes I think all of us, we get stuck in our ways, especially in cybersecurity. We're like, you can't do this. And then something comes out and it's like, wait, you can do this, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard, right? Yeah, I think you and me meet security professionals all the time who are stuck in their ways.
Yeah. I think it happens a lot in the industry. And it's because over the past, I don't know, 25, 30 years, as it's evolved and grown, I mean, security's exploded, especially with the prevalence of the cloud and whatever. It's changed. And this helps lead into our topic, right? On access control or access out of control. There's kind of a fun play on words this week just because of how identity is a mess in the world. Um, but I mean, it's you have to evolve, and this conversation is gonna highlight a bit of that. And I mean, at the end of the day, no one's right anymore. There's a million different ways to do things, so everyone's kind of right in their own right. What are you, captain this week? I saw the mug.
No, it was I just remembered we always keep forgetting. We get straight into topics 'cause I think we're so excited, and we forgot to talk about like that we have coffee, right? There's
Yeah,
coffee in our
we're
name, right? So
we're we're off the flow this week because we're doing this a different day than we usually do.
it's true. Well, it's in the morning. Like I'm usually like
Yeah,
much more awake right now. I've worked out, so but yeah, yeah. So I'm having my same basic stuff. One of these days, man, I'm gonna get out and get some proper weird, some not weird, but different coffees and be able to talk it up someday.
yeah. I'm drinking something different this week. I know I've mentioned Blue Bottle coffee in the past, or like the La Colombe, like lattes and beans and whatever. But this week, I have beans from Partners, which is a company in New York. I think it's like Flatiron, or I forget what the bag said, but it Partners coffee, and it's great. So I'm a fan. My wife already bought another bag of beans sitting in the pantry ready for me. So I'm starting to bring more variety into my world
I'm gonna
without a fancy subscription like I used to have.
I'm gonna throw out this crazy hot take. Take it up if you want or not, all right? But one thing that we do sometimes that I do sometimes in October, and especially into Thanksgiving, is I will buy canned, um, what is it, sweet potato? Like when it's like
Yeah,
for like pies and stuff. You
yeah.
take a scoop of that, stir that in your coffee,
Hmm.
and you get like this pumpkin, very fall with a little bit of cinnamon and
Interesting.
you get a very fall taste. Plus, pumpkin is great for you, so it's got a lot of nutrients and things in there. So, um, you know,
You said canned sweet potato though. So are you talking canned pumpkin or canned sweet potato? Canned
uh,
pumpkin has all the spices and stuff.
I
Canned
think
sweet
it's canned
potato is
pumpkin.
like
I think it's canned
it's
pumpkin.
gotta
Like when you're
be.
making like a pumpkin pie, right? It's in the
Yeah.
baking aisle. Yeah, I
Yeah.
just
That's
grab one of those.
canned that's the canned pumpkin
Yeah,
with the spices. You just dump that in a pie crust and you're like done.
yeah, and you're done. Yeah, so I take a scoop of that and put it in my coffee, stir it up, right? I usually drink coffee with a straw so I can keep stirring it. But yeah, and
Yeah.
it's an interesting. Like I was
Interesting.
again very hesitant, and then I was like, hey, it's not bad, especially if you put a little bit of cinnamon in it.
Those are all supposedly very good for your guts.
Yeah, yeah,
Whereas
exactly.
me and my slightly sweetened black coffee, I guess I'm just straight caffeine and antioxidants and whatever else is in there.
Yeah.
It's great.
All right, so let's take it in. Let's take it from the ground level, right? I'm gonna be interviewing you on this one.
Oh boy,
You're
this
leading
is
us
gonna be
through this
fun.
charge. Yeah, you're gonna lead us through this charge, right? So let's just define, right? What is access control in simplistic terms, and why does it matter?
Wow, you hit me right from the get-go. Access
Keep
control
going.
is, I mean, it's think about like usernames, passwords. It's how you prove who you are and what you're authorized to access. I mean, in the world of technology, as it's exploded and become such a part of our lives, we have to control access to data. And so behind the scenes, we have these mechanisms, which we often call the identity provider or our credentials, that we use to prove who we are. And beyond that, I mean, there's role-based access control or RBAC, like most people know it. There's other forms like I don't
You gotta
know how
define,
far
like,
we'll
what
go
does
with it.
RBAC mean? My dad's gonna be watching this podcast, and the last thing I need is him being like, "Hey, Cameron," right? He's gonna be like, "Hey, Cameron, you didn't talk about who you were at all. You just went straight into the podcast again." And he's gonna say, "You say all these terms. I have no idea what they mean," and then I'm gonna get a call with like a list as he writes them down. So you got to define, but what is RBAC?
Yeah, I'm gonna drive the security professionals crazy because they're like, "Get to the point. We know what it is." But for all the newer people in town here, role-based access control is you have this thing called a role. It's like, what am I? Am I an admin? Am I a regular user? Am I a super user? We like these are terms we hear about all the time. You can create custom roles, but at the end of the day, it's a sort of construct that says that you assign permissions to. So if I'm an admin, I have all the permissions, right? Because I'm the administrator. I can do anything. Super users, slightly less. You're kind of like a half baked admin. Let's say you don't have all the permissions, and then user is more tightly constrained. So, depending on your role, you have a set of permissions that give you access to do certain things, whether it's access data or modify data, whatever. But I mean, there are different, more granular forms of this that have evolved. And so, before we get into that, do you feel comfortable with what access control is? Since you didn't talk about who you are, you're the AppSec guy. You use tokens and all the fun stuff and access things and say, okay, we're done. Whereas I'm the architect and actually have to kind of, well, not kind of, but define architectures and how access works and fit it all into this massive blueprint, whether it's just a software application or an entire enterprise.
Yeah, no, I think you define it in a really good way. I mean, from the AppSec perspective, right? As I was saying earlier, right, we care about the permissions around the credentials, right? But
Yep.
more so, where we see a lot of those leaked credentials is hard coded credentials, right? Are there admin level
Yeah.
credentials, in hard coded in the code? And so when we're scanning it, right? I think I talked to a lot of AppSec professionals, and the running joke is you never really have to ask for permission for anything. You just go into the code, search, a password equals something or credential, or with a quick search or
Yeah.
run some open source thing, and boom, you find credentials for days. And then you're like, all right, I don't need to go talk to IT or anybody because they're all hard coded in one way or another, right? Sometimes they remove them in the actual latest version of the code, but they forget to look at the Git history, and that's just as searchable as anything else. So I think you defined it really well. Yeah. I think there's still more that we have to kind of dive into, but I mean, there's so many ways to take this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for anyone in the industry who's listening, I mean, identity and access management is a massive capability. Like it is a pillar of cybersecurity in and of itself. So
That's an
a
entire
little
career.
disclaimer. Well, yeah, we'll get there. But I mean, I was doing some reading on cybersecurity org structures. I got a report from, I think it was Ions, shared it with me, and just the different sizes of organizations and how they structure their cybersecurity departments and whatever. In a common theme emerged in that they always had identity as a pillar, like a dedicated capability, regardless of the size of the organization. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that. We see this in much larger organizations because identity is hard. Um, it's been around. It's the fundamental building block of cybersecurity. It's the cornerstone. If you don't have identity, you don't have security. I know I might get some people spun up by saying that, but at the end of the day, This is foundational. It is at the base level of security. It's one of the most important practices. Now, historically, I'll be honest, I thought identity was one of the most boring things in the world. I hated thinking about access control when I first got into security. And now I think it's one of the most interesting topics. So in the past 6 to 9 months, I've been focused on identity like you wouldn't believe. I've got a buddy who's like he global identity architect for a massive private corporation. I could talk to my buddy Paul all day about this stuff now because it's interesting and it's evolving and AI is kind of
I was
brought
gonna
it back
mention
into
that.
the spotlight.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the end of the day, the way things are evolving, like perimeters are as we knew them are gone. And now everyone's saying this like identity is your new perimeter. The network perimeter ceased to exist. So
What does
now
that mean?
you're
Like, I'm trying to understand what you mean by that, right? Because I think in traditional fashion, we think of our, we go back 10, 15 years, our eggshell defense, right? We have, dude,
yeah,
I was listening to a talk, they were talking about
it's
castles,
an
and they're
eggshell
like,
is
they're
exactly what
like,
it is.
everyone was like, I guess if you Google like cybersecurity castle and boom, you'll have like all these images and graphics of like, here's my company. And if you think of it like a
Yeah,
castle, right? Here's our moat and our
it's a moat.
walls, right? And so like,
There's one gate where you can get in if you're authorized.
yeah,
It's
and that's
always that stupid front door. Like
yeah,
that's why we use it so much.
it's the stupid front door. So true. But that's no longer the world we live in, right? It's no longer that, right? We're not,
Right.
we don't have like companies don't host their own all entire infrastructure, so they know it's all internal, right? At some way or another, if you use AWS, sometimes you use some, Azure or something, right? And they communicate to one another, boom, traffic going out of your network and going into something else. Even in AWS, from my understanding, still stuff goes over the internet there.
Yeah, depending on how you have it configured. I mean, the network architecture is extremely important. If you want to keep it private, you got to start using different sorts of endpoints for services so that you can keep traffic. Well, it's not even totally private, right? Like now we start talking about the network backbone that AWS runs, which is private to them. So if someone really wanted to on the inside, they could probably find a way to inspect your traffic. But to the outside, it minimizes your exposure. But back to the sort of perimeter talk, when I say network is the perimeter, it's because everyone would have data centers and VPNs and what have you. And so you're on these private networks. So that's your perimeter. Outsiders can't get past it. So everyone feels like, oh, well, and this is an antiquated way of thinking, but since it's on my private network, it's secure. Absolutely not. This is why we talk so much about insider threats. And that concept of the network perimeter is gone. It does not exist. If you're operating in that mode, I'm sorry, you're stuck in like the 80s. I mean, I was born in the 80s, so that's a weird statement. But anyway,
But insider threat,
identity,
I was going to say, insider threat does not pertain just to what is it? Like your first party, right? You could have like Target, right? Target was breached by a third party supply chain, right? They gave
right?
minimal access, but that gave just enough access for them, the attacker, to exploit and own them, and then find their way to exploit and own you. So it's not even just
Yeah.
you have to worry about,
So
and that's where identity is just so important, right?
it's funny that you use that example because it's a perfect illustration of how identity is your perimeter. You have third parties that have access to your systems. If I can exploit the third party, I can compromise you. So I'm not even directly attacking you anymore. I'm attacking a third party that I know is weaker. And this is on steroids now because we're in a world like think of the shift to SaaS. Everyone wants to use SaaS because now I don't have software as a service. Okay, I'll define the acronym. It's a well-known one though.
Nailed
Yeah,
it.
I've been trained. But everyone wants to sign up with these providers, and so they have massive amounts of data and access to that data, frankly, for multiple customers. In a lot of cases, hundreds, if not thousands of customers. So why would I attack your company individually when I can attack one of your providers and now I can exploit a mass amount of companies? So that's the shift we're seeing in the bad guys. And I was reading a newsletter about ransomware and such earlier today. I know I'm weird. I read security stuff all the time, but Comes with
It's
the
not
territory.
weird. I think that's what everybody does.
Saturday morning coffee, I was reading about ransomware and identity.
I was reading about some kind of articles or something all morning too.
Yeah, but we're seeing attackers shift their mindset. Now they're getting faster and whatever with the prevalence of AI, and they're weaponizing it faster than defenders are. And response times are still as high compared to how fast attackers can exploit and GTFO with your data. But instead, they're attacking providers that have, it's kind of like the exploit one and get access to many sort of thing. And
Traditional
now
watering
there's,
hole attack.
yeah, and I mean there's a trust that's typically built up with these SaaS providers, and so you might be able to compromise the the tenant for a company X, and by doing so, you have a path in to company X's systems, and now you can move
Oh,
laterally and find more.
you're giving me flashbacks right now, right? Because what is it? In March, PCI just released, was it A1.1.14 or something? It's something along there, or four, it might be four, that is separation between multi-tenant. And originally you had to pen test once a year for multi-tenant, and that
Yeah,
was fine. Now they've upped it to every 6 months. So every pen test company probably super stoked, right?
yeah,
Everyone's so happy that they get to do another pen test every year, even though it's a quick one. It's still another one, right? And you have to do it within 6 months and show your proof. But it shows that, right? Like, do you think that? Why do you think PCI brought that up? Right? You bring it up right now. Why is the industry finally waking up that identity and these multi-tenants that are quote unquote multi-tenant and isolated are not so isolated?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, the anytime you have a multi-tenant system, like my team actually wrote a specific standard on multi-tenant security for the company I'm currently at. And that's because we were working on a new SaaS solution that was multi-tenant, and there's very much a need to ensure that you put the right controls in place. And I think a lot of people, it comes down to relying on access controls. Um, and that's another reason why they're so important, because access is everything. This is how attackers exploit everything right now. It is the leading cause of breaches. If you want to talk about a recent attack that's been in the news, it's a ransomware attack, but underneath the hood, it's actually identity is the issue. So Jaguar Land Rover in over in Europe got hit with a massive ransomware attack. They've been down
Heard
50,
it's
they're
gonna
losing $50 million a week and been down for weeks or months. They didn't have cyber insurance. At the end of the day, all they did was exploit a valid credential to get in the door and take over.
heard it's gonna cost like the European Union economy like billions of dollars, or at least because of the that impact.
Yeah. I mean, they had to ask a for a government loan for something like 1.5 billion pounds or whatever to help stabilize their operation. And the reason this comes to mind, and you're talking about like the compliance framework shifting to identity, for example, is because if you actually watch what the cyber insurers are doing with their terms and what they're kind of protecting against, they're ahead of the curve because they have to protect their revenues and their companies. And so like the way that they write terms against ransomware right now has changed. And it's not so much about, I think they're excluding, it's something along the lines of like they're excluding the the attacks where it's done by identity, compromised identity or whatever. So
Why do you think that is? Is it because it's such a well-traversed like
because
prevention
it's easy.
method? It's easy for attackers or easy for companies to defend against?
It, frankly, it's both. I think the reason we see attackers doing this is because they're exploiting the human element. So another popular attack or bad actor we've heard about, or I think it's actually the attack. It's different. I don't remember the name of the attacker group, but Scattered Spider is all the rage right now. It's been happening since 2022. All they do is
What's scattered spider?
exploit.
I'm not familiar.
So they exploit I have notes on this actually because I've read into it and I'm trying to find them right now. Um, so I want to make sure I get this right for you. And it's a series of incidents that are it stems from social engineering. So now you're going to say, well, what's social engineering, Kurt? It's it's not like just social media. It's me exploiting the human factor, right? So I find ways to trick you into giving me information that I can use to steal your credentials or and then weaponize them essentially. And so there's a certain criminal collective that has become well known for Scattered Spider because they're financially motivated, they're using social engineering, they're using different tactics to kind of compromise the multi-factor authentication mechanisms that we think are so amazing and prevent um, the bad guys from getting access. But they're kind of crafty in that, again, they're exploiting humans and they're acting as though they're like personnel, valid personnel. Like they can go grab my name on LinkedIn, act as me, call the help desk, and trick them into resetting my credentials and giving them access. Or they can set up a fake web page where it's like they can send a phishing link to it and lead someone to type in their credentials, and boom, you've compromise a credential again. And now you're in systems with a valid identity. And so if it's my identity, it looks like it's me doing it until the SecOps team is like, wait a second, this is all weird, non-standard activity, and it looks like an attack. And now you've got to kick off like incident response, breach protocols in some sense. So it's just like, it's not impossible to defend against. It's much harder because it requires changes in human behavior. And you can't necessarily address all of these things with technology.
True. But I mean, we've worked in a lot of enterprises, and there is often that quick race or that quick solution of just toss me admin, right? Just toss me admin so I can
Yeah.
get this done and get it across the line, right? That is like, why does that still happen today? I mean, we still hear about it today. Plenty of teams, people, I guarantee you, everyone's like, oh, yeah, I've been there. I've been there. Yeah. And then they go do an audit months later and they're like, oh, whoops, this was supposed to be removed, within that week, right? Because somebody
Yep.
maybe wrote it down on a note or they just jogged it in their mental memory and then actually never did anything.
Yeah. I deal with this every single day. I mean, having set the standards and people come to me and then I have to delegate to my team, obviously. But it's like, we found an issue, and I'm just like, that was supposed to be fixed. Like, why wasn't it fixed? And go dig through history and be like, well, it was a temporary credential given to make an exception to unblock work, and it just never gets removed. We see a lot of this all the time because identity is hard. I said this earlier. The reason it's hard is because it's tedious. Let's talk about the principle of least privilege for a minute. So, another thing we have to define, what does that mean? It means that I assign you a set of credentials or a role or a set of actions you can take that are simply what you need to do your job and nothing more. What we see a lot in the cloud, whether it's a human, a non human, so a service account, or you have machines taking actions, we see a lot of people that are like, I don't have time to define the role because there's hundreds and hundreds of possible permissions I could potentially need. So what do? They use a wildcard. They just say star. I'm going to give this person every
Gotta love that.
action. And I hate this because I personally, me and my team have tools where we monitor human and non-human identities and see the permissions. And this is what a capability came out 5 to 7 years ago called Cloud Infrastructure Entitlements Management, KEEM for short. And the whole goal was I'm going to plug it into my cloud estate. It's going to look at all of the roles and the identities and monitor their access. And based on API calls, it's going to tell me what least privilege is so that I could right size all of those roles. And now all of that, call it laziness, negligence, wanting to not spend the time doing the work. Now I can basically automate it based on reality. So yeah, sure, go assign star. And over the course of 30 days, based on what action that system or user or role takes, I can see what it actually needs and I can cut off all the other permissions. There's a whole host of technologies out there that do this, but I don't think it really, they didn't do it well. So like I
Mhm.
have a, one of our big solutions that we have is part of one of our, we use Palo Alto Prisma Cloud. It has Key. I've been very vocal that it does enough to highlight the issues. It doesn't let me take action on the issues, which is where we are today, is needing to be able to take action quickly. Because if an attacker gets hold of one of these valid credentials or identities, it takes them less than 20 minutes to exfiltrate data.
Yeah.
So preventing is important. Being able to address things quickly. Now we need automation to operate at machine speed because that's how attackers are operating today. And AI is just making it worse. Like I know everyone hates to hear AI, 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 but AI has put lit a fire under this because as people are growing and advancing their AI capabilities from typing into ChatGPT or any of the generative AI solutions to ask question, get answer quickly, to move towards AI agents, where now you can say, plug in a piece of technology, say, I want you to do this, this, and this, and it can go take action or tap into a bunch of different data, give you answers or solve the problem for you, to agentic systems that are fully autonomous. Now, agentic AI doesn't mean agent to agent, multiple agent systems. It means I have a fully autonomous thing that can take action. And so if an attacker can weaponize that and operate at machine speed with a valid identity, or he can trick my agentic system into taking negative actions in my systems, how do you address that?
Mm.
So
I just
security is evolving yet again.
it's very true, and you're giving me flashbacks because I was at last con and so many people talking about AI, right? But what did I keep hearing in every version or amalgamation or combination, permutation of every talk was all these AI coders, AI tools, they have a habit of embedding secrets,
Yes.
access control, right? In the hard coded credentials, right? Or in the code somewhere, right? And I was like looking up the latest OWASP top 10 for LLMs and Gen AI apps. And I believe it's number 6. I'm trying to click into it. It says sensitive information disclosure, which sounds exactly what I'm thinking, right? Intellectual property, sensitive
Yeah.
data. I was just trying to see if they had, oh, PII, yeah, all
Yeah.
kinds of
And I
everything. So,
mean, you compromise an identity, that's the goal. It's not like the ransom, back to the ransomware thing I was reading earlier today. Over the past just 1 year, we've seen less companies paying for ransomware because they're investing in things like immutable backups. Take a backup that can't be modified, put it off to the side where someone can't get it. So now that if I get hosed because ransomware came in and encrypted all of my systems, great, delete them, start over from an immutable backup. I don't have to pay you anything. So the shift has been extortion. Rather than encrypt your data, I'm going to steal it. And if you want it, now you got to pay me. And so again, going back to get a valid credential, lateral movement, operate at machine speed, get in, get out, less than 20 minutes, money.
yeah, but we're starting to see like this was in one of the talks. I'm still looking up this thing trying to figure out where it actually says it. So I give up. I'm sure more time I could find it. But there's this wave of right. You're saying AI level attacks, but let's think from the defender side, right? From the defender side, we're seeing this wave of AI enablement defense, right? The SOC is starting to
Yeah.
get AI enablement. AppSec is getting AI enablement. ProdSec across the board is all starting to get
Yeah.
AI enablement. It's a very interesting thing. So now we have AI protecting and AI attacking with human in the loop the whole time, right?
To some degree. Yeah. It depends on how advanced you are, right? Like anyone who has successfully built an agentic system currently, like they've just accepted automation as part of their life and they've enabled it to be able to make decisions. A lot of massive corporations don't have the risk appetite for that. So they want human in the loop every step of the way, which slows it down. Yes, it's a check, but what's wrong with humans? They're error prone. They're going to give up their
So is
credentials.
AI. So is AI, right? Like hallucinations, and AI is historically, it's not deterministic. It's, one week
Yeah,
it'll do X, Y, Z, and then next week maybe
different
the
problem.
different. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like maybe that's why, right? Human in the loop is still good. It's just maybe not every step, right? Why not have?
Yeah,
I could envision in my brain, and this is how I'm thinking from an AppSec professional kind of way, not maybe as a SOC engineer. We have to bring our SOC engineers or SOC directors in here, but I think like it wouldn't like say an alert gets triggered and XYZ is happening credentials wise. AI would do this whole thought process and then kick an alert maybe into Slack and be like, hey, here's my report. Here are the four
yeah,
actions I can take. Which one do you want me to take, right? Maybe from least heavy to most heavy. It's, like completely lock down the system, trigger an incident response, or be like, hey, just lock down these credentials, right? And then send me another report on what's happening. I'm going to come in and start reviewing it as a human, right?
yeah.
That's what I could see it coming in. It just informs you, hey, something's happening. And then the human selects what is the best option based off the information that's being presented.
Yeah, I think this is a sort of interesting space too, because we're seeing the evolution of the Security Operations Center or the SOC, like you said, to leverage AI to move faster because it's all about mean time to detect and mean time to respond. Get those numbers down so that if we can detect within a minute and respond within 10 minutes, chances are we're stopping the attack in its tracks, right? But when you put a human in the loop, it slows you way down. And so, again, I was reading another report this morning about how containment takes something like, I don't know, 6 to 8 hours in most cases. So, like in the AI enabled SOC, the idea is that your L1, maybe even your L2 analyst work, the triage and what have you, investigation can be automated with AI. AI is very good at reading through data quickly, making its machines don't make as many assumptions as humans. It's still, yes, it's still error prone, but what we're banking on is the fact that the machine operates on a set of instructions. It looks at the data and it says, "This is what I see." Now, if you ask a human to take action on that, yes, you've sped up the process, but is the human there to respond and can they respond within 5 minutes? And then what's the containment action? So if containment today takes 8 hours, that's too slow. If attackers take 20 minutes to get in, get out with your data. So how do we speed it up to the point that we can respond? And I mean, the answer is really automation. Attackers operate at machine speed. The defenders have to do the same. And now there's a level of trust you have to be able to build into your solutions to do that for you. And now I'm going to tie this back into identity. Your automation needs an identity. You need to know what actions it's allowed to take and what actions it is taking because now you have to monitor that thing too.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I want to understand why it takes 8 hours because I think that's a big question people are going to ask is why it takes hours. I worked at a SOC and I could see it, why it took 8 hours, but one of the first things I did was like anytime I detected anything reasonably malicious like malware, pups, any kind of, weird detections happening, I
Yeah.
just built automation that would automatically isolate the system, right? It would, CrowdStrike or EDR tools, things like, all of these things have, well documented, well useful cases where it just locks the system, cuts it from the internet, and boom, now at least your blast radius is smaller. And with my automation, it would do that. It would detect the user, send the user and the user's manager that the system's been locked down. Here's the number to call while we
Right.
investigate, right? So that they know. But yeah, it was I would those things were triggering. So when I'd be at night, I'd wake up and be like, oh, I quarantined like three people's systems, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
and I mean that's the problem, right? Everyone operates differently, and so while you read these reports and it's like the average SOC takes 8 hours to contain an incident, right? That's not always true. There's going to be organizations like the one you were at where you have the trust and you have the more advanced capability, and you're willing to say, well, you know what? I'm going to lock down the system and stop business from proceeding for that one person because the opposite, if I don't, the potential impact is much worse. And so not everyone's willing to take that step or like I keep saying, trust the automation to do these things to very narrowly contain what the problem is and just put a halt in that one area. Now, if it brings business to a halt, you have a problem. So you have to strike a balance like we always do in security. And not everyone's quite there yet.
Interesting. So, I mean, from what I'm hearing, is a human factor, right? The human is maybe one link in or problem in this long chain of things, and that
Yeah.
it sounds like people are unwilling to let go of control.
Yeah. I mean, it's again, like people have a hard time trusting machines, and we're very often control freaks, and you don't want to fully automate things. But like we've seen the struggle ourselves, even with the rapid adoption of AI and allowing for use of these tools in the environment where our job is to protect the environment. Like we can't have these incidents occur or data exfiltrated or what have you. It's avoid incidents. But if you want to innovate, you have to be willing to give a little in the meantime, right? And so we're striking that balance as we speak of okay, let's innovate, but now it's like let's talk about MCP servers. They're all the rage. Model context protocol for those of you who don't know yet, but this is how AI systems talk to each other. MCP servers, it's not a traditional server. It could be, but most people run these things locally. It's a way to enable an AI solution or an LLM to engage APIs and take action with external tools. And the reason everyone's kind of freaked out about MCP servers is because I was reading about this earlier too, of how when you're using APIs, you very often have to use your own credential or a token or whatever. You authenticate saying, I am who I am. And then you get a token that says you are authorized to do X, Y, and Z. You have to provide that token to the API and it says you are authorized to do this. So I'm going to give you whatever data. Bring an MCP server into the mix. Now we have a different problem. Someone puts their static credential in that tool, and now the AI can take a whole set of actions at any time because the API is like, you have a token, you're authorized, go nuts. It removes that barrier of human, provide me your credentials so that you could do the thing you want to do. And now it's, hey, machine has your credential and I'm just going to allow it. And so
Yeah.
how do we protect that credential? And we're starting to, and this is secrets management. So how do you protect identities and tokens and the rest of it? We've solved this problem. You need to use a secrets manager. No one's doing it yet, but we're starting to see. I think a company called like Asterisk Security just released an open source secrets wrapper for use with MCP servers. It's an amazing idea. And so
Well,
if
I
we
also
can gain
I
adoption, I think we address a massive problem that's unfolding again with identity.
yeah, I was at that last con. There was somebody talking about how the MCP standard is just consistently iterating, and I believe in like
Yep.
the first iteration, it did not consider too much access control to where it was
Nope.
like you're supposed to have like two servers and one's the like permission server and then one's like the MCP or something. And then the new one, the new standard that came out just a couple months ago is recommending like OAuth everywhere, right? It's
Yeah.
saying you're supposed to adopt an OAuth standard. But the problem is a bunch of people already built in it a bunch of MCP servers, and as you're saying, are
Yeah.
using them locally. Are they updating? Are they adopting the latest version? Are they upgrading to that? Are the people who creating the MCP servers adopting those ones and setting that up? And how do us as security professionals even detect, understand, and manage those while enabling the business to continue to move at the lightning speed that AI requires?
Yeah. I mean, it's a hard question. I mean, honestly, like even let's focus on OAuth for a minute. For anyone who doesn't know, OAuth is a way to it's authorization. You you've already authenticated, you've proven who you are, you've gotten a token that says I'm authorized to do this. OAuth is very often used to enable a system to interact with another system. So whether you want to call it like a personal access token or what have you, it's a credential that says you are authorized to take a set of actions. And so again, static credential provided to MCP server. What good is it? Um, it's we see a lot of instances where when humans are writing code or whatever, you write your code to get token, and that token is short lived. So it could be for like 15 minutes, and you might have logic in your application to refresh that token to get a new short lived token every time you need to use one or whatever it may be. And so short-lived access policies are one way to defend against a compromised credential. But if it's a real credential that is authorized to get a token and now the system can act with that token, you have to revoke the whole identity or lock it down, contain it, and the systems have to respond to that. I think another problem we see is a lot of systems will cache these things. And so even if I deactivate a set of credentials, it might take time to propagate. So my policy to say your token's good for 15 minutes, maybe it's good for longer than you think it is.
Interesting. Yeah, or you'll be getting a lot of like in-access control alerts, right? Because the credential's been revoked, but wherever the system or app or whatever is using that invalid credential is now just hammering away trying to do whatever it is, and the SOC's going to be like, "What happened? Like, has
Yeah.
this thing been taken over?" And then it suddenly starts working, which I think feels even more suspicious from a security perspective, right? We always say like, look at the invalid creds, but everyone's, I think as an industry we've kind of accepted you very much want to look at who logged in more so rather than all the
Yeah.
invalid attempts, because it's the valid attempts that get in are the terrifying ones.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes you can't really differentiate. And so you have to look at the behavior. And this is why it's so hard to run the security operations group, is because the tactics are constantly evolving and you have to find ways to identify potential attacks and anomalous activity. And this is all AI and machine learning driven now. So your better solutions will use the machines to actually do these detections. So, like, if it's a valid credential and I see, well, Cameron's doing things he normally does. But the second you start doing it faster, so like say you make 10 API calls an hour and I have that baseline built, but suddenly it's like 200 within 5 minutes, something's wrong. So,
Or I wrote a really fancy script and I'm, being
well,
amazing at my job.
but again, like it looks like a potential compromise. So, what do you do? Do you err on the side of, well, Cameron, he's smart. He wrote a program that he's doing things faster because he wants to save time and move on to the 9,000 other things he has to do every day? Or do you err on the side of caution and say, actually, we're going to contain that and we're going to call Cameron to be like, hey, man, are you doing this? And you're going to be like, no. And we're like, great, that's an attack. Rotate the credential and move on. Yeah.
All right. In interest of time, we've kind of been venting. We've been going through a bunch of different things. I want to ask you, Kurt, I'll go first so that you can get time to think. But from the defender side, or how can we tell our listeners, what are the things we should be thinking about as, around identity, right? What are the key takeaways, the defenses? Is there technologies we should adopting? What is a company from like level one, right, a startup to like an enterprise, and what is that journey from your perspective being this expert? I know it's a lot. I'm gonna go first, and you can think a little, but from the AppSec perspective, I think it's very simple, for at least from my domain, and then we've kind of been saying this throughout there, right? Don't hard code credentials, right? If you're a developer, I understand it's very easy to just throw your credit in there while you're building something and test it, but do it right. Throw it in an environment file. Make sure your environment file is not, it's in your git ignore so that it's never actually committed into your history. Follow those best practices. Use a maybe test creds just to see. Don't use actual valid like admin creds. Maybe set up a service account that has essentially read-only permissions while you're doing your testing, rather than using your own creds so that you're already a leg up. I know it's extra loops and that we have to hoops or we have to jump through for that, but it's going to greatly help your workflow, and getting into that mental, mind map or process is going to be massive. And then in general, right? Least privilege just everywhere. Stop over provisioning everywhere when you need to. Maybe at the beginning, but tune it down. Make sure you have general audits all the time. I know my team, all the security tooling that my team has, we do audits every 3 months. We remove, developers if they don't log in within 3 months to some of our vulnerability management tools, because if you're not logging in, you don't need it. You can request it later. Our access is very quick. So, but we try to reduce that blast radius so that anybody's in there, only the people who are actually using it. Those are at least all the things that come into mind. And now the last thing, when you're vibe coding or AI coding, please, please, please double check. I hope you have some kind of open source tool that right before you pre-commit, it scans and looks for any credentials that AI might have embedded in there, because all the time we're seeing a lot of attack vectors. Once you open that, whatever it built underneath the hood, you start searching, and you're like, oh, it shouldn't have done this, it shouldn't have done that. Depending on how you prompt, right? It's all depending on how you prompt and how you do it. There's so many examples that I saw this weekend of like big, massive, like secure prompts. I think as an industry, that's where vibe coding is heading, where a lot of companies are going to, there's a lot of companies that you're going to purchase that are going to be just helping developers vibe code in a very secure way. And as much as LLM and the, like all the actual companies are trying to do that embedded into it, sometimes it's still prompting. So, but that's kind of what I think. Kurt, I'll kick it over to you to give you some time to think. Are you ready?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. I would have been prepared to answer that outright, given some of the thoughts I have. But I do want to highlight something you said first, in that secrets in code. This is a problem that attackers can exploit because people have their public GitHubs and whatever. And so if you commit a valid credential in your code, it's very easy to find, test, exploit. This is what attackers are doing
Well,
constantly.
and
It's not all phishing.
it's scraped in seconds. There's a tool,
Yes.
there are many vendors out there. There's two, I won't say their names, that constantly scrape GitHub publicly. So
Yeah.
the second that credential is out, they know within seconds. So even if you want to, you try to like, oh, I got to delete that, the human
Too
response is
late.
too slow. You're already too late. It's already been
Again.
eaten up and scooped. And who knows what other, APTs, APT is advanced persistent threats, usually a nation state.
Yeah.
Who knows what everybody else is scraping and doing that's not publicly known. So the second that cred is out there, you got to rotate,
Yeah. That's essentially
invalidate, and
like,
rotate.
I've had some fun with this, like just kind of testing an environment and not using like real honeypots, but using the big bad security tools that we have available to us, and put a system like spin up a VM in AWS, give it a public IP address, and allow ingress from the whole internet. And then in your security tools that eat up all this information, watch how fast that system is hit by some sort of malicious traffic. It's less than 5 minutes.
Well, like Shodan, right? I've seen we throw something on the internet for a second or a few seconds, and
Shows
boom,
up.
oh, it's already in Shodan. And right, and Shodan's only like a $3, $4 lifetime subscription, right? Imagine
A
how many
great
other
tool.
attackers. Oh, it's an amazing tool, right? Especially from the defender side. But as we were talking about earlier, everything that we use to defend, or attackers can just as easily find a way or replicate or use to attack.
Yeah. And I mean, there's attackers purchase credentials on the black market all the time and use password spray attacks. They just test all these passwords they've purchased. It's cheap, it's easy. You only need one out of a billion to hit, and you got something, right? So if I can do that for $10, like, so be it, because the upside is potentially much larger. But now, going back to the question, what can we do? You can do a lot. There are a lot of ways to do all of these identity and access management, implement all these solutions. But first, I'm an architect, so I'm going to start with the architecture. And I've already kind of hinted at this, to say the network perimeter is gone. Stop considering that your first line of defense. Identity is your first line of defense now. Identity is the perimeter. So your security architecture has changed. It's no longer network centric, it's identity centric. Whether you like it or not, get used to it, because that's the world we live in. And it's hard, because even in the last couple of years, I've had to evolve my thinking of, like, if I stop something at the network level, like, great. But you know what's much easier? Phishing someone, especially these AI driven phishing campaigns, are amazing these days. So you see less phishing, but it's more targeted and it's more successful. Getting a credential is so easy. So now you need to focus on protecting those credentials. And there's so many tools out there that can help with privilege access management, can help with monitoring identities. We're seeing identity governance is a big thing. There's these big expensive solutions, but we're starting to see more modern solutions evolve from smaller companies. And it's amazing, because what they're trying to do is remove persistent access and move towards a more just-in-time approach. When I say just-in-time, it's I need access, so I'm going to request it, and I'm going to get a short-lived credential to take the action I need, and it's going to go away. And so now you've moved to this sort of on top of using something like the zero trust principles to say you should be continuously authenticating. Don't trust anything or anyone. Constantly make people or machines prove who they are and that they should have access, but do it in a just in time approach so that you never have standing access anywhere. So that if your credential does get compromised, your risk is lower. And then obviously do the same stuff like access reviews. You were talking about doing access reviews every 3 months. I would say implement technology, automate it, do it more continuously. And so we need to move towards a world where credentials do not have standing access to anything.
There's a lot of food for thought right there.
That's just like the tip of the iceberg, man. We could probably go on for hours about this, or I could bring in like one of my buddies, my buddy Paul. I love talking to him because he knows everything there is to know about identity, and I learn from him all the time.
Get him on
It's
the
there.
show. Let's get him on.
I was thinking about this yesterday, so when I talk to him like next week, I'm going to tell him I mentioned your name. I'm going to have to bring you on now, man.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely amazing the evolution and the technologies we're seeing in the identity space. All the major providers are innovating they're leveraging the AI capabilities that are taking over the world right now. Some are doing better than others, but obviously everyone's trying to do things better at machine speed and all in the name of minimizing risk.
Yeah. Well, I think we've traversed the topic. I think we could go. I think we have to put a follow-up session. Bring Paul in here. We'll deep dive this topic again. See where the industry kind of changes. Any last comments, Kurt?
Oh man, I'm fried. Like making my brain work overtime on identity. It's an exciting topic for me now. I think anyone who's like me and thought it was boring or still thinks it's boring, dig deeper. It's really interesting the way it's evolving. So dive in, reach out to me, reach out to Cameron. Like I'm always happy to discuss this clearly. It's become a topic that I've learned to just know and love, and I've got so much further to go.
Right. Yeah. It looks like my video has frozen, so that's a good time to slow it down. I'm forever frozen, I guess. That's funny.
At least you have a decent look on your face.
I know, right? We'll fix it later after the call. But I want to thank everybody for coming. I have a great outro tagline, right? Remember, with great access comes great responsibility. Stay caffeinated, stay secure. Thanks for listening to
Always.
Coffee, Chaos, and ProdSec. Thanks, Kurt, for joining. Go hit that subscribe, follow, whatever the message is, whatever the options is. And please, come back next week when we release our next episode. Thank you for listening and take care.